Now we want to talk about using HTML to create lists and tables. To create a list, we have to use what we're calling nested tags. We're going to have tags inside of tags to create our list items. So the easiest way to do this is if I go back to my browser and go to Code Actually, I have an example of a list right here. This is called an unordered list, and that means it's going to put bullets next to it. And so when I mean nested, it says that we have an unordered list opening and closing, and then within that list that's going to be bulleted because it's unordered, I'm going to have several list items opening and closing, and then the text within that opening and closing is what's going to show next to the bullet. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to come back to Visual Studio Code and add that into education, since these are different places that I've been to school. And because the code is already ready, we can just save it. And we can come back to our page and refresh and see how this looks. And so that you can see it creates the bullets. If you wanted this to be an ordered list with numbers instead of bullets, it's very easy to change that. Just make it an OL and make sure that you change the closing tag properly for that. Save it again and refresh, and then we have numbers next to it. So that's pretty simple. Another thing that you can do that uses nested tags and a way to help delineate things on the page and start providing more structure is to create a table. And so you should use tables to present data on your site. On Code Actually, I have an example here of some data code, and we're using 3 different elements. So I'm going to copy all of this and put it into Visual Studio Code under my hobbies. And I want to also emphasize that I am just setting up this page the way I'm doing it. You can, of course, have your own sections, your own content, use lists and tables where you want to. But we have 3 elements as part of a table. There's the table opening and closing. TR stands for table row. So in this case, we're going to have several rows. We're going to have a TR, 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 TR. That's 4 rows opening and closing. And then for each row, we're going to have either TDs for table data, and so they're going to be going across for the columns, or for our headings, we're going to have TH for table header. And so let's save this and see what it actually looks like when we come back to our page and refresh it. And now we have a table down here. You can see the TH looks slightly different than the code that's actually in the table. I've got my 3 favorite TV shows and my 3 favorite musicians. And you can also see that I use the attributes for border. That puts a border around the table. And width, I gave it a pixel width of 600. If I wanted to make that more responsive to the page size, I can also put a percent in here. And so let's save this as a percentage, and you'll be able to see that that is going to size with the size of the window. That's a very good thing to start thinking about when we're starting to think about making our sites responsive for different types of devices. And we'll talk more about that as we go. So lists and tables are pretty easy. You just have to make sure you open any tag you close properly. Now you may see tables on an old site, a very vintage site, where they use tables to actually lay out an entire page. You can imagine that with a grid that looks like a table, and people wanted to put maybe their navigation and their content in different table cells for table data. We don't do that anymore. We're going to use techniques in CSS and other HTML techniques to get the layout that we want of our page. But you may see sites where people have used tables for that purpose. The real usage of tables is for something like this, where you're displaying data in a way that you want to make it easy for somebody to be able to understand what you're displaying.